So before I ask Louise to join us on video, we'll be going over today a topic that Louise normally would talk with our students about during a seminar, and she'll give you a virtual tour of the water cycle and how CAT fits into that with our off-grid water system. And then after a short break where we'll collate your questions, we'll then go into a Q&A session where Louise will answer those. So Louise, do you want to join us on video and share your screen?
Hi everyone, I'm Louise Halestrap. I may or may not have met some of you. I've been at CAT for many years, 20 something. I left for a little bit in the middle and came back. Now I teach at the graduate school, but before I did that I was in charge of the biological systems at CAT, which included anything that can biodegrade, so basically most things, including the sewage treatment system and the water treatment systems. So I'm going to take you on a tour today. I'm going to just share my screen if that's all right with Alice. Yes, she's nodding. Okay. There you go. So I'm working on two screens today. So whilst I'm trying to look at you and say hello to you and give you eye contact on my funny green dot, I'm actually looking at my other screen, which has got my PowerPoint on, so that I can see all your comments when they come up. So forgive me there. So this is Sky to Sea. It's one of the, actually it's a live tour we do on site. And as you can see, those of you who haven't visited, we live in a very lush part of West Wales that's currently having a bit of a drought. We haven't had more than about 5 centimetres of rain since before Mother's Day. So it's very dry at the moment, but here it looks very wet because it was last year, I think this was taken maybe. So there's CAT. One of the founding ethoses of CAT is to use what we have in order to create a lower carbon and higher biodiversity environment. And as you can see from this picture here, CAT is nestled in the hills. It's about 100 metres, I think, from sea level, from a Huntleath. And the reservoir, which is on an old slate tip, is actually even higher than that. So we're going from our reservoir and then we're following the water down until it meets the catchment that goes into the sea. Okay. So who is this webinar for? Well, obviously it's for all of you because you lovely people have come to see us tonight, which is great. If you're hoping to build a water treatment system, I did see at least one person saying that they might be. Oh, can I just hide that poll for a second? Yes, I can. Or if you're just researching and looking into, like someone was saying, they're into the zero carbon element of everything, it's a good way to get into that and see how we can cycle things around. So this system uses less embodied energy, less energy in use, it creates biodiversity, and there's a bit of a juggling act there between the using energy and creating the biodiversity, but also we try and cycle the nutrients, which means we are trying to use the nutrients from our own doings whilst it's travelling down towards the sea. So you'll see what I mean in a minute. My keyboard's not working. This is interesting. Give us a second to go. Hold on a second. We've got a technical issue. See, I can't do it from my other screen. Yep, there we go.
Is it working now, Louise? Great.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. So we're using CAT as a case study, and we're looking at focusing in on how we catch, clean, store, treat water for use, treat water and cycle nutrients, and then responsibly release that water back into the ecosystem. Okay, this is the first picture of our actual reservoir. I'm used to using Zoom with a little hands up signal, so I might say hands up, in which case you can wave your hands, you know, pretend that I can see you. That would be great. So some of you may have seen the reservoir. It's right at the top, at the back end of Cat, and now it's on the quarry trail, so you can actually see the reservoir. It's about 10 million litres of water, and it's mainly from one source. So if you can see my mouse wiggling about, it's this watershed here and this watershed here, and it's this crook of the valley. So it would have originally been a stream, and it was dammed up by the miners using slate on its edges like that. There's another little water, a little runoff from a field that also comes into it there, which you can see flowing in. Okay, so this is an image of underneath the reservoir. So you can see there's some steps for measuring things, and there's a rope there, which you can see very, very clearly, which means this water's it's kind of nice and clear. But what you can see, if you look carefully, is that on the top here, there's floating stuff. And on the bottom here, there's sinking stuff. And we don't want either of that in our water supply, because any bits any bits in the water can hold microbes, which we don't want. So we want to get the cleanest water we possibly can. So we use a kind of pipe here. As you can see, it looks very like nautical. And it's kind of a mesh pipe, which means that we don't accidentally suck in fish and other bits that we don't want. So it actually got its own biofilm growing on it, which does a little bit of water filtering as well, interestingly. Okay. Then it travels by a pipe that you can just about see in that image. There it is, come up better. And that pipe travels downhill. Now that's quite important, that we're using the natural availability of slope to carry our water from the top of the hill to the bottom of the hill. And that pressure of water that goes from above to below, the kind of potential energy in it is called head. It's a word I might use later. Okay, so what could be in this water and how to get rid of it? So before that, I'm going to go back again, and I'm going to go to this one. I think there's a little poll that Meg's going to put up. What are your instincts telling you about this water? This is something I would do with my students or my tour people, and we would actually get a glass of the water and we'd look at it and feel it, and we'd smell it, and we'd say what was our kind of gut feeling about it. So I'd like to ask you what your gut feeling is, if you're able to answer this little quiz. Leave it a couple of seconds while people type their preferences in. And the preferences are, yeah, that's fine, safe to drink. Maybe I would drink it if I was really, really thirsty. I'd only drink it if it was boiled or filtered. No way. Get me to a tap of nice water where I don't have to think about where it comes from. I'm glad you love a quiz, Annalisa. Okay, we've got some answers. Oh, they're coming. Okay, so the instincts are 6% are saying yes, safe to drink. I would say these would be the ones who'd maybe be a gambler on The Millionaire. Who wants to be a millionaire? Drink if I was really thirsty. I probably come into that category. I also know what's in it, so that helps me get to that category as well. I drink it if it's boiled or filtered. Okay, that's a sensible answer. Most people have answered that one. And it looks like maybe one person is really not happy with even the idea of answering a quiz to say they might drink it. So that's great. Thank you very much. So our instincts would show more or less the same numbers when we do a straw poll, standing on that platform looking at this water. Most people say, because it's so drummed into us, that we really should boil it before drinking it, and we'll see why in a second. Okay, so what's in the water and how to get rid of it? So the most urgent and potentially deadly things, potentially lethal things, are microorganisms, dead animals, or poo. Basically, that's the most dangerous thing. And the microbes generally live, the ones that are dangerous to us, generally live on mammal poo. So how do we get rid of it? The good thing about microbes is we can kill them very, very easily just by boiling. So it's great if you're by campfire and you can boil your water. And most places in the world have somewhere where facilities for boiling, so that's great. But if we're doing that on a larger scale, we can't boil every milliliter of water that comes on the cat side. So what do we do instead? Okay, there's several options. I'm going to just gloss over, but then we're going to go to see what we actually do. You can use a sand filter, you can use a mechanical filter, which sometimes uses energy. You could use an activated carbon filter, which has got a lot of embodied energy behind it. You could use a reduction oxidation filter, or you could use a chemical, which is the most common way that water is cleaned, and that chemical is chlorine. Chlorine is an amazing chemical because it kills all these pathogens, and it doesn't just kill them at the source, it kills them all the way along the pipe until it comes out of your tap, which is why we're used to very, very clean water. There are some issues around it, but basically it's kept Britain and many, many countries healthy and not dying of dysentery in their infancy. So it's a good thing in my books. Chemicals that might be in the water. So there might be pollutants in the water like nitrates and phosphates from the farms, less sometimes from poo on farms, but sometimes more so from agriculture, growing crops. Then there can be metals and salts from sewage if you're in an urban area, or from farming and mining if you're in a rural area. So we've got quite high copper in our reservoir, which is why it has that lovely blue colour. And then you might have these additives in your water, which are chlorine and fluoride. Fluoride comes naturally in a lot of places. It doesn't happen in Wales, but it happens in lots of other places. The thing about chemicals is you can't boil them away, so you'll have to filter them in a different way. And the main way we use on a small scale is an activated carbon filter, which I said has got this added embodied energy. If you were in a large-scale sewage treatment system, you would do something called chelating them out. You'd kind of put salt in, and it would settle it out, and you'd settle it down, and you'd throw that away. And again, it's quite linear, but it does get rid of dangerous things like arsenic and lead out of your water, which is very important. Okay. So types of filter we might want to use. I put them under three main headings. We've got the zappers, which literally they blast the microbes and burst their cells. And then we've got the sieves, which the water goes through and the lumps stay behind. And then we have ones that I call sticky sponges. The microbes and chemicals stick to the surface of them, and then they can be pulled off by other microbes and when they're needed as plant food. So these use a thing called adsorption, which is, it's a bit of physics, but it acts a bit, if you can imagine rubbing a balloon on your head and then sticking it to the ceiling and it sticks there, but then it's really easy to pull it off again. It's a bit like that, but that's an oversimplification. Okay, so we use a slow sound filter. This is a picture of the slow sound filter when it was first built. It was beautiful. It was made by our engineers, and they were going on the Victorian arch of brick and a lime render. And sadly, there was a frost just at the wrong time, and now there's these ugly, horrible plastic things all around it. It's food grade plastic. It's all fine. It just doesn't look as pretty. And this is part of our living laboratory that we always have, is that we'll always try something out, and if it doesn't work, we have to try something else. And that's okay, we find out new things. So in the sand filter, you've got, it's about 1.5 meters deep of substrate. So the water comes on the top, as you can see in the image with the plastic. You can see my little mouse wiggling around where it is, and that water level is controlled by that ball cock there, very much like in your toilet. So it keeps it that high. And then the water slowly, the old water, the new water keeps running in, and it slowly goes down through the column and out the bottom. And that looks a bit like, hold on, it will come in a second. Yeah, it acts like a sieve, and it's got a dirt layer, but this is what it looks like. So this one in the image has got a lid, but we don't have to have a lid. We don't have issues with mosquitoes coming into our system, partly because it's warm and partly because it's running all the time. But you might want a lid if you're in certain places. And then the water is the wiggly line, and that column goes through, down through the sand, down through coarse sand, down through gravel and out. So basically what you're doing is you're copying a natural process, which is water traveling through rocks, and you're grinding up those rocks and making them into sand, and then you're pushing the water through it. So you're just using a process that's natural, and you're optimizing its kind of size to fit something that cleans the water for you. So it's still the bugs that do the work, and the bugs sit about 5 centimeters from the surface. Those of you who work in inches, it's about 2 inches, isn't it? And what happens there is, as they get sieved out, there's debris and dead stuff. So that's nutrients. So the bugs live in that layer, and they kind of recycle each other, and it works on and on for about 2 years in this country with our climate. If it's a hotter climate, it works more or less constantly. So this is a picture of the Schmutzdecker, which is a German word for the living layer, or dirt layer, or biofilm, if you want to call it. And there's some lovely MSc students. Oh, that's really nice. With that layer there, and if you were one of my students, I'd say give it a sniff. So I'm going to say, just think to yourselves, because you can't answer me, what you think it smells like. And the answer is, it smells like river fish. It smells really like, quite pleasant, not horrible, but it smells of river fish. And that little layer there, you see the little brown layer there, is the Schmutzdecker, and that does part of the work of the sieve. So part of it is physical, and part of it is microbial and biological. Right, next. Need to see how I'm doing for time. Hold on. Okay. It goes through a UV filter. So when I first worked at CAT, we didn't have a UV filter. We just drank the water, and very occasionally the old person would get a bad tummy from it. That was not okay after we started to get lots of visitors. So we now follow it used to be the Environment Agency, now it's the NRW, which have rules on how much microbes, if you like, are allowed in the water. And the answer is they have certain indicators, certain indicator species of bacteria that they grow on a plate, and they put it in the oven and grow it for 3 days at human body temperature, and they bring it out and they say, how many units have we got here? And the amount of any of those types of units that they can test is 0, because you can do 0 with chlorine. So it's 0 for Britain, 0 for all over Europe, I think. However, chlorine doesn't get rid of cryptosporidium, so there's no test for cryptosporidium, which is also, it's a very rare, but it's not a very nice disease to get. It's an insisting bacteria. Okay, so we put it through the water filters, the UV filters. There's a downside to this. This is not no energy. This uses the same energy as a small fridge. But we are trying to show what is possible without going down the kind of business as usual route, if you like. So we're going to decide, okay, we're not using chlorine, we're off the grid, we'll use UV, and we'll only use it on the water that we know is drunk. So all our watering water for the gardens, that goes straight through unfiltered, and then there's another unfiltered line, I think for some toilets they go through that. But anything a visitor might drink, so anything in a tap going into our accommodation, that all goes through this filter as well. And as you can see, what happens is the light, I'll do it on the thing on the left, the light is reflected in a shiny tube, and the UV light goes on, and what happens to the bacteria? They travel through and they burst. They just completely burst and then they're dead. There's an issue with this, which is why you need really, really clean water, and that is something called shielding. So imagine my little piece of paper that I've got as a prop here. Okay, I'll use this. Is a bit of leaf, and I'm a bacteria, but if I was really a bacteria, I'd be smaller than the bit of leaf, but use your imagination. Okay, so here I am, travelling along, and the UV filter's hitting the leaf, and I carry on. I don't die. So that's the issue with UV. So you have to make sure you've got really super clear water before it goes through there, which is why we put it through the sand filter. Okay. There are lots of other ways to filter water, but that's the end of our water's journey to the taps at CAT. If you were to come to CAT and come on a tour or come on a course on sewage or water, you'll be able to get in and see behind the gubbins and see everything working. But for this, I've only got a limited time, so I've got to move on. So what we have to do though at CAT is we've invested person power and energy into this system. So it's really important to make sure we use less of this precious resource, and actually being in charge of our own system really brings that home, that you don't want to waste it, even in West Wales where it rains in metres, not millilitres. Okay, so using low water appliances is not terribly in the consciousness of the average UK dweller. It just isn't. It's not something. When you go to buy a new fridge, for example, they'll say, oh, come and look at this one. It's the super new AAA rated, which is the new one. It uses hardly any energy. It's great. You've got to have this one. They won't say, actually, you've got a third less freezer space, things like that, or the downsides. But in water, has anyone been to buy a new bathroom? And I would guarantee, because I've been looking at a bathroom recently, that you actually have to hunt for the low flow appliances, and actually it's all about luxury, and I paid for my water there, therefore I'll use a lot. So things like this are, I know, they're very niche. I can see you all chuckling going, yes, maybe in my small holding, but not in my house. I agree. These ones use no water, but there are times that these might be very useful in Britain with this type of weird droughty climate. We might all be having to have a second loo outside, which is a compost loo. And there's a more posh compost loo for those of you who've been to CAT. Both really simple, both easy to make. I'll do another one of these on them maybe. This is a waterless urinal. Most people won't even have seen one of these, but they're basically a urinal that does use no water at all. Sensible. Every service station, school, everywhere should have. And I'm hearing that they're on people's allotments and they're great. Excellent. This is Wise, a little plug for Wise. So in Wise we had a really tight budget, but we still managed to make all the toilets low flush toilets, and the showers have got a special little thing in the top, which makes them use less water. And of course there's airflow taps, which I just showed in the last image. I can't see what I've written because the panel's in my, hold on a sec. Oh yeah, okay, so we've used the water and we've got dirty water again. And it's better that we know what's in our sewage. So at CAT, we're not a household, which I'm assuming most people on this tour webinar will be, but we get a lot of visitors who aren't used to not using the mains. So we will get, and I have seen, all of these things in this unsavoury don't flush down the toilet picture in our settlement tanks, and sometimes all the way to the reed beds. So not very pleasant. Best not to use them. A lawnmower has just started up, so I'm going to have to shut the window. Hold on a minute. Right, I'm back. Okay, so shampoo. So what's in shampoos? Unless you buy eco shampoo, you can get a lot of phosphate in shampoo, and phosphate is plant food, but if you get too much of it, it's a really strong plant nutrient that causes eutrophication. It causes the green river problems that we don't want. Then your kitchen sink is full of bits of food, and the troublesome bits of food are generally the oils and fats and the lumps. Washing powder, again, can be very, very high in phosphates. And coffee grounds. Coffee grounds used to drive me mad when I was at CAT. They used to get everywhere. They really do get everywhere. Anyway, so we know what's in it. This can be in it. But mainly, once we know that it's our own system, we can take measures to reduce these things. Okay. So this is the eco bins at CAT. I don't know if you can write in the chat if anyone stayed in the eco cabins. They're educational accommodation for up to 36 people at a real squeeze. I mean, these bunk rooms have got two beds, and a 3 foot, 1 meter gap between. So there's no room for anything else, like luggage. However, it's really fun, and loads of school kids love it, and it's cheap, so it's great. So here's the lovely Sarah using the facilities, and they've used their oils and fats and flushed things down the loo. And where does it go now? So this is the sewage treatment area for those eco cabins, and again, some lovely students. This was in the winter. It was very, very cold, hence my nice red hat. And we are standing next to what most people would think is a septic tank, but actually it's called a settlement tank because it's got an outflow that goes into another system. Someone's saying you don't need anything more than the cabins. They also heat the shower water with the fire. Yes, they do. Excellent. Okay, so this is what a diagram of that settlement tank looks like. And apart from the poo, it's quite similar to the reservoir, i.e. you've got the floating stuff, the sinking stuff, the water coming in and the water going out. And it comes in very dirty and it goes out dirty, quite dirty. I also asked my students to look in this little, I'll do my mouse, this little inspection chamber, which is straight outside the settlement tank, and ask them the same question about what does your gut feeling say about drinking this water. I don't even have to do a quiz for you because I can imagine, well, if you didn't say no, I'd be a bit worried and tell you no. It really smells. It's got that nasty, eggy, ammonia-y smell, and it's brownish grey. So it goes from the settlement tank and then it goes to the next stage. I'm going to hold that back from you. The excitement is almost unbearable, but I'm going to hold it back from you because what we have to do to the next stage is we have to dose it very much like the tide from the sea coming in a couple of times a day. So we wait until this chamber here gets to a level, which is that level of white scum there. And then this thing here, which you can only just see, and I couldn't find a diagram of it, is called a dosing arm. And what that arm does, it's got a bucket of water. And when it gets to a level, the water starts pouring in to the bucket. When the bucket gets heavy, it sinks. And when it sinks, it opens a little hole at the other side, which lets the water rush through in one big flush rather than in a little trickle all the time. And what that does is it floods the whole of the surface of the next exciting instalment. Right, so this is called a dosing chamber. That's a dosing chamber. This is siphon, that's a dosing chamber. And the bottom one, we're going to 1, 2, 3 different places, which we're about to move on to in a second. And those places are, you've guessed it, they're reed beds. So this is the reed beds. Good few years back this photo's taken because we're in lockdown, we had to use the archive. As you can see on top, there's Phragmites or common Norfolk reed. There's a lot of interesting stuff on reed beds. They're almost mainstream now, and as a result there's a lot of kind of facts that have become facts because they work, but they're not necessarily the completely optimized process. So things like sizes, depths, shapes, they're still very much work in progress, and yeah, they're shrinking all the time, a bit like computer brains. So this is Phragmites australis at the top. On the second layer we did all sorts of things. We've had raspberries, we've had juncus there, that's yellow flag iris, but we've had other plants, and basically everything we use still manages to clean the water well. So it's a lot to do with the matrix, i.e. the gravel and the substrate, as well as to do with the plants, which they do a little bit of the job. But basically what this is, it's a mechanical filter that traps any solids on the stone and around plant roots, and those are broken down by microorganisms. And also it's an aerobic environment, which means there's oxygen present. So it's stuff that comes out of this reed bed is way less. I'll answer the raspberry question in a minute, it's distracted me. The aerobic environment makes this water way less smelly, and it takes less than 5 minutes. It literally flows in, down, into the next one, down, and it comes out. And it's still quite toxic in terms of bacterial load, but it's reduced its kind of chemical toxicity. So the ammonium is turned into nitrate. So from something really toxic to plants and fish to plant food. So this is great. And the raspberries aren't to necessarily to eat, although in theory you can eat the raspberries on the top as long as you give them a good wash, because they're not touching the bottom. But it's more to do with they've got a really strong root. They don't mind a bit of shade where these are in the shade, and they are quite tough. They don't mind a bit of nutrient-rich stuff. I'm getting really hot because I've had to shut the window. Right. Okay, this is my very high-tech diagram, which I drew about 20 years ago before CAD. And this is what it looks like in this reed bed if I took a section through it. So basically you've got sand and gravel, plants in it, and it comes out the bottom. So it's not unlike the sand filter, it's just a little bit of a tweak again. And again, we're using the bugs to do the work and a mechanical substrate. Right, so then it goes from those two reed beds into a settlement, another settlement chamber, this black thing. And this settlement chamber is called a secondary solids collection chamber. And that collects the dead bacterial bodies, and then it goes on to this one. So I deliberately showed you this image of an empty one so you can see what they're like. It comes in at the top, comes out at the bottom. And this one here is where we get the nutrient cycling going on. So we can grow plants in this that are above ground, i.e. you wouldn't grow carrots in it, and you wouldn't grow anything that would touch sewagey stuff, but you can grow things like tomatoes and tall things where the fruit dangles off. Or you can grow things like nutrient-rich things like cabbages, and then you can compost those. So you're taking out the nutrients and you're recycling them, but you're turning them back into minerals. You're not letting them into the water and causing troubles. So I haven't seen that done for a while, I can't, but I used to do that. Anyway, then you see the water coming out here at the bottom, and it goes along this little pipe. So if you're building your own system, you wouldn't necessarily want this pipe showing, but because we're showing everyone the system all the time, it's great to have the pipe showing. And then it goes into the horizontal flow reed beds. The horizontal flow reed beds are, when I get to the bottom of the reed beds, I'll answer those two questions. The horizontal flow reed beds are like a bath with the plug in, and the water comes in just under the surface and it flows along and then out. And it takes a lot longer than the other reed bed. It takes maybe a week retention time. So you do the sums, the engineering, and work it out to make it travel along for a week. And in that time, you have got much more pathogen kill, i.e. the kind of good bugs, the water living bugs will eat the bugs that might give us tummy aches. And also you get the nitrogen moving from, it's gone from ammonia to nitrate, and then it's gone from nitrate to nitrate to nitrite to nitrogen gas, and then it goes off into the atmosphere. Most of it, some of it is still enriched water. So this water here is still really good for watering. You could use this to water the gardens now. We would have been allowed to discharge this to land way back after the first set of reed beds, but we're doing our ecological best. And where space isn't an issue, maybe this is something to do. Our reed beds are, they were built a long time ago in the late 80s. Cement wasn't really a demon then, so they're built with cement and lined, and then they're a wiggly shape to be beautiful. And if you were building them now, you might be able to just use clay buns or something much lower impact. There's a lot of the embodied energy in a reed bed. You can fiddle with it to make it do the same job without the energy involved. Okay, then it flows into a lovely pond, and the pond is absolutely swarming with frogs in spring. Occasionally it has little indicators that it's slightly anoxic, which means there's a little bit of oxygen depletion there. Quite often we have a big algal bloom on it, or a plant bloom. I tried to grow some lovely little fairy moss stuff that you grow on top of ponds, and then and water hyacinths. We did an experiment with those to try and grow them and then crop them and compost them, so that Roger could use them in the gardens. And another way of cycling those nutrients safely back into food, because those could be composted and safely used on any crops, because they're one step away from the sewage. Okay, I'm just going to get to, oh no, I'm going to answer the questions, but first I have to open the window again because I'm boiling. Oh, back again. Okay, so that's how a horizontal flow reed bed works. I hope you're chuckling at my hilarious image. The water level is quite high, and yes, that's an image of a king carp, which is, as you can tell, is the same as the ones in the picture, rightly spotted there. Somebody wrote, I saw, which another word for them is marsh marigold. We also have yellow flag iris on one side and water mint on the other side. So maximum biodiversity. Okay, so I'm just going to get to the end of this bit, and then I'm going to answer some questions, if that's okay, and then I'll see how we're doing for time. Okay. So this is the pond. This is the stuff we were cropping. Prince Charles came to have a look at it 1 year, long time ago now, probably 90s, 20 years ago, something like that. And it was looking all beautiful like this, and he smelled paint wherever he went, as always. And he's got one of these in high growth. And so he said to me, "Oh, that's amazing, Louise. You've managed to have a clear pond. That's amazing. Mine's always covered in algae." And I said, "You know, I've been waiting here for about an hour. There was nothing else to do. I've just composted it all over there." So that was my amusing, kingly, princely anecdote. Okay, so it goes into there, and then from here, it goes into one willow, which is just outside the pond. And the Environment Agency used to come, when they were still called that, and test our water. But they soon stopped after twice, because they realised that even in the winter they'd get maybe one drip every minute. So they'd have to wait too long for a sample. But also when they did test the sample, it was super good. So it had low indicators of nutrients in the water and bacteria in the water, which was great. It would have got a blue flag for bathing water quality, so you could, bathing water wise, you could jump in this pond, but it will be a bit tricky to swim in it because it's only ankle deep. Okay, oh, right, so I'll stop there and I'll go back and answer some questions. I'm just wondering how I can reach the first questions. They seem to have disappeared. So, William's asking, are there any ideas about how we could implement this type of system or alternative water cleaning systems at a larger scale in cities? Cat water takes amazing. The thing about alternative water cleaning systems on a large scale, Germany and Austria do it a lot. They're the lead there, and they use ozone. But the problem with ozone, you need it's not great, it's ozone. And they have it in swimming pools. It's lovely. You go in the swimming pool and you swim around and you think, oh, this is great, no chlorine. But at the same time, you have that feeling like your hair's standing on end and the thunderstorm's about, because ozone has got that quality of it that's a bit strange. What I mean by ozone is a gas, I think it's O3. And what it does is it blasts the cells very much like UV light. So it's possible, but probably the cheapest thing to do is to use a jug filter if you don't like the taste of your water. The thing about our water might taste so nice is because it's from an area of very low biotic activity. It's from just a reservoir that's very deep and lovely, whereas if, for example, I saw a lot of people there in Oxford and along the River Thames, and along the Thames, millions and millions of litres of water are abstracted there for drinking. So the further down you get, the more salts and things it gets. It gets, you know, bits and bobs in it. And although it's clean in terms of there's no microbes in it, sometimes there's a little bit of nitrates going on and other things which are legal but not necessarily desirable. But still, drinking your tap water is the greenest thing you can do. Please don't stop doing that. It's a great thing to do. Okay, so Kat said, with the settlement tank, does the sludge eventually build up to a point where then it must be dredged, or do the solids continue to break down and maintain some sort of equilibrium? I glossed over that one a bit. It's a little bit more complicated than I showed. There is a valve at the bottom of that tank, and you can empty the whole tank out in one go, and it goes on to something called a sludge bed because it carries the sludge, and it's like a reed bed, but it's got more sand, and it only happens once, maybe every 2 or 3 weeks, that you take a little bit out, or once a year that you empty the whole thing out. We used to do it in the olden days by hand, using a special thing, and took out the top sludge and let the bottom sludge out. And then one day I turned on the sludge and realised it all came out, and there was not really that much of a problem lower down in the system. So that was a handy, safer way of dealing with it, because all you do is you turn the thing, it all comes flying out, turn it back, and then it's all gone. And yeah, so that's what happens. If you're in a warmer climate, it does much more reach an equilibrium, or if we had a much bigger tank, it would as well. So Lara's asking, with the sand filter, I'd learned that the gravel was above the sand lower to sieve out debris if you have the water entering at the top. So with our sand filter, we know we've got incredibly clean water coming in. If you have dirty water coming in, it can actually block the first bit of sand before it becomes a proper block. If you've got big lumps of leaves and soil coming down in it. So that would be why you did that. I've not heard of that before actually, but I can see why you do it. So it's doing the environmental accounting of what system you need, what you have, and what you have to do with it. I hope that answers your question. Paul's asking, how close to circular can you be, i.e. can you have a secondary bed back to a sand filter? No, you couldn't do it that close, because what you'd have then is you'd have nitrates build up. And if you get too much nitrates in the water, it's plant food, yes, but it's also toxic to humans. It wouldn't kill you straight away, but it would give you blue babies and things like that. It's not really nice. So it's much more sensible to use your water really wisely, have a water bath, use this water for watering your garden and your plants, and just keep using the mains, or if you haven't got the mains, use something else. If you really had to, it is possible, but when you think of you've got a green pound, you want to spend that green pound as wisely as possible, and to start cleaning your water when it's got human sewage in it, you spend loads of money to do very little extra good work. Whereas if you just take a bit more from the mains, but have a super low flush toilet, a super low flow shower, a water butt, all these other things, then basically you're doing better than putting all that embodied energy a whole other system, which might even need a pump because you're going from one thing back up to another system. So you lose the head there. I hope that works, Paul, and I hope you weren't confused by my arms flailing around. I just noticed myself. Okay, right, so I've done the eco cabins. What I haven't done is the site system. So I'm going to blast through that really, really quickly, and hope that we'll be finished by past. Sorry, Paul's asking a question. Can you filter water for drinking in the same way you're collecting rainwater rather than natural filtered through the mountains or ground first? It's really common if you live in loads of places like Australia, New Zealand, bits of Africa. They don't drink the mains because it's too salty and chlorinated. They drink the rain. And you'll see, if you've seen films about ranches, the film Australia springs to mind, where they've got that huge water butt for the farmstead. That type of thing is really common, and then they didn't then, but you could put a sand filter in that and it would work because you've got one thing raised and then it comes down to the house. Okay, so that's done. I'm on to the next one. So these are called the settlement tanks. These were originally designed after Jeremy Light, who was an old cat genius engineer type, and he went on a course with someone called Uwe Berker, who was one of the first people to design the modern reed beds as we know it. And he went on this course, and they said, what you need is these big chambers and bark in a ring in these chambers. So they tried getting these big chambers and they made them, and they got the sewage going in through a dosing chamber, very similar to the one you saw for the other system, and these chambers are 2 meters deep and 2 meters wide, and they've got a hole in the bottom that the water flows out. So the idea is there's this big, beautiful basket, imagine it, of straw, and all the solids come in and gradually compost over time. It's a bit like a tree bog. It's really beautiful. But unfortunately, it wasn't like that. It was more like this, which still makes me laugh. Oh my goodness. So when I first came to CAT, I was presented with this after coming out of academia into real practical. It was a bit of a shock. And the volunteer, which was me at the time, had to climb in and unhook each of these little white things off the fishing net. And then this was picked up by a digger. And then you'd have to go, there was a little fishing net clasp right at the bottom where that arrow is. It was the most revolting thing. Oh. Anyway, I soon changed that system into a settlement tank, very similar to the one above, with water coming in, and these tanks didn't need emptying like this. The reason they didn't turn into this beautiful composty tree bog thing is because Jeremy had been on this course and he hadn't realised he'd undersized it by like 10 times. So it was 10 times as much stuff coming in as the tank would allow. So it just got clogged up with sewage. There it is, looking very beautiful. I reckon that is about 2002. If you went down there now, there's so much more growth. It's so much more, it went from an agricultural field of grass to a reed bed, which was a step up. And we, even in 2010, we had reed buntings and little tweety wood warblers and all sorts of birds, which you just would not have seen when it was a field. Just loads of wildlife was in there. So now this is way more overgrown. You can just see, the reason I chose this is you can just see on the left here where my arrow is going, a willow swale, which is slightly different. It's another add-on that we did with our reed beds down the bottom that we didn't do so much with the one in the eco cabins. And the way a willow swale works is, I'm just showing you another reed bed first. The way a willow swale works, this willow swale on the left is not one from the CAT system because I couldn't find one. But basically it looks like that. And my amazingly quality art will show you again that you basically plant the trees on the downside of the slope. So any water flowing down the slope will go into their roots. And it's really, really simple, but it takes a bit of power to dig these trenches for about 300-400 meters. It takes a good few days to dig them and then to keep them clear in the winter. But our willows are amazing, and they grow to sometimes 3 meters in a year, which means they're really good. You could dry them for biomass. They're really good for replanting. They're not great for basket weaving because they're too wet and sappy. But that is another, we call that polishing, the same as the pond in the last system. And it kind of gives a final polish to that water and takes out those last little bits of nutrients, adds a bit more wildlife. And by the time it gets to the River Dillas, there's a tiny trickle. I think, if I'm right, the catchment is just where it's just before this tree. It's just there. There's a little outflow pipe that I rediscovered under the brambles, and I went to have a look, and there was literally nothing coming out of it. That was about probably 8 months ago. And so the River Dillas is very clean and very clear, and it's a mountain stream. So we have to keep it very clean and very clear, otherwise the fish will die and the biota, the organisms within the river will suffer. So we really want that to stay beautiful, and it has. And that is the end of my talk.
Thanks, Louise. I'm not sure about everyone else, but I definitely learned a lot from that, even though I work at CAT. That was great. And so now I know it's very nearly past, but We've got a few minutes to answer some questions. So Gemma's got one, William's got another question. And we were going to have a quick break, but I think seeing as we've only got 2 questions at the moment, we should just go straight into them. So if anyone has any final questions, do put them in the Q&A box. But Louise, if you want to answer Gemma's question first, so maybe read it out too, so we've got it for the recording.
Yeah, I'm probably up to about 5 questions I'm all right for, if that's good with everyone. Thank you for all the lovely comments. It's really nice to see all these little, it's all I'm seeing. I can't see your faces, so it's really odd for me. The nearest I'll be ever to a TV presenter. There you go. So clean water scarcity will become a huge global issue more and more. What do you see these systems being part of the solutions? Or are there new, more high-tech things being developed? I think these are still really, really relevant for rural places, and they're still not the norm. So the norm is still to get a normal septic tank or get something and throw energy at it that wiggles and has bells and whistles on it, and doesn't do that much for the immediate flora and fauna, and also it doesn't do that much for nutrient cycling. You can't reuse it. Most people don't want to reuse it, to be fair. So keeping on the mains is a really good idea. But what the big water companies can do and are doing, because they are feeling this water issue more than, as much as anyone else, is that so for example, if you've got a new housing estate in your village, I'm going to keep bringing up Thames, I don't know how you say it, but I saw someone was from there and it grabbed me, I don't know why. And there's a new housing estate being built there. There's 20 new houses, and it's just tipping the sewage treatment system slightly over the edge. So instead of building a whole new treatment system for that 20 houses, what they do is they just put it in the old one and bung another reed bed on the end. And that does this polishing to make sure it's extra good before it goes out again. So, and also I can see it being a kind of stamp of greenness, that they can go, oh yes, we do these, and we have willow warblers too here. When you look at the difference between a kind of conventional system and a reed bed system, it's quite striking, the difference in flora and fauna. But actually, the big ones in towns, they're there because there's not much space. So if we really were to optimize the processes more, we would be losing those plants. So it's until you change the way we live in the Western world, with so much emphasis on land prices and house prices and property, it's very difficult to get that fair representation for wildlife, because everything is money. So if you can get something a metre smaller, it doesn't matter if you'll get willow warblers or not. So yeah, water, I can see water becoming the next global issue, but it's still very much we're not nationalised water anymore. So I can see that until it is, maybe something's changed about the water, the way we pay for water, and it's not just, well, I've paid my water bill, I deserve to use whatever I want. We're not going to see that. So I can see coming up this kind of A, B, C rating for water, the same as it's happening for energy, because there's a whole lecture I do on water and water security that's around how the water we use as people living in Britain is masking, the infrastructure we have is masking the absolute chaos we are putting on our rivers and our rivers wildlife and our biodiversity. It's one of the reasons where our biodiversity is dropping so like a stone. Okay, so that was Gemma. Thanks for that question, that's great. William, is there going to be more talks like this? It was great. Oh.
We'll give you some information in a few minutes, William. The form that we take you to at the end the feedback form, it's got some more information about our future online events, Zero Carbon Britain course, virtual open days, and yeah, our webinars have been booking out pretty quickly, so you need to get on there quite quickly. But I think there's a new one, sustainable food systems, on the website, so you should be able to book onto that after this, if you want to watch that one in a few weeks' time. But Louise, how about Callum's question?
What would you suggest for a house to change from a septic tank to something like what you're describing on a much smaller scale? Very easy, Callum. You would possibly keep the septic tank and use that as your settlement tank and drive a hole in the end that, instead of goes off to a soak away, goes into a reed bed. So it's not that tricky. And there's some I think there's a day course on sewage treatment at CAT, but there's also a book, which, if I just rummage for a second, I might have it here. We found on the evil Amazon for about £1 sometimes, or maybe found in the CAT shop still as well. It's called Choosing Ecological Sewage Treatment. It's an old CAT publication in the olden days when we did publications. It's by Nick Grant, Mark Moody and Chris Whedon. Chris Whedon, all of those three have got strong links to CAT. Chris Whedon used to be the biologist at CAT. And it goes through how you might want to do that. So that's a good one to go on. Ian Saunders, is that Ian Saunders? I know. Once a rebate system has been set up, is there a lot of ongoing maintenance? Well, if you make your own sewage treatment system, you have to then maintain your own sewage treatment system. So whatever system that might be, you will have to do stuff. Generally, a reed bed, you might have to do some fiddling for about 5 minutes once a week. But then you might have to do a few chores that are 6 monthly and a few chores that are yearly. So some people like to chop their reeds down. Some people like to leave them up. Some people like to do all sorts of things. But there is, if there's the same as if you've got a septic tank, if there's a block in your pipe, you're the only person who can unblock it. So there is an element of labour involved. Lindsay Thomas, does CAT have animals? I don't think we do anymore, do we? We used to.
No, I don't think we do.
No, sadly.
So I think, well, that's all of the questions from the Q&A box answered. So if anyone doesn't have any final ones, I just thought, Louise, it might be good to mention what courses this webinar would have been, what the original seminar, what courses you were teaching that for.
Yeah, okay.
As part of the graduate school. Normally
it would be like a lecture and accompanying live tour where you can get your hands in. I'm just looking at all the different things. Yeah, I was supposed to say something about that. I forgot all about that. So it is on the sustainability and adaptation courses, so built environment planning and sustainability adaptation, and also on the green building and the food and the ecology. And I don't know if the MR get to come and have a look at it too. I think they might be able to do something, not sure. So basically it's one of the most diverse, because even if you're dealing with the built environment, you're dealing with humans and drinking water and poo. So yeah, and also ecology is really important, because ecology doesn't just sit within David Attenborough films over there. It's what we do to our environment. So environmental ecology now is very much looking at how best we can optimize our ecology. So it's really relevant for those type of degrees. I'm a biologist by training in the olden days of your,
yeah, so Thanks, Louise. No one's asked any more questions, so I think we'll sort of draw to a close. So I just want to say thank you for everyone for joining. It's been great seeing you all praising Louise and saying how much you've enjoyed today's webinar. We will take you, when we end this webinar, you'll be redirected to a page on our website. You'll be able to fill out the feedback form. And by doing so, you'll be able to receive a year's free membership to CAT and receive our members magazine, Clean Slate. You'll also be able to find out a bit more about our graduate school and our postgraduate courses, so all of the ones that Louise just mentioned. And we'll also give you some more information about future online events, whether they are more webinars, our virtual open days for our postgraduate courses, or our Zero Carbon Britain online course, which is also quite popular at the moment. So yes, thanks for joining us. I'm not sure if you've got any final words, Louise, before we go.
Yes, you can tell I'm not a pro. I just thanked everyone, said thank you very much for the very sweet comments, and I only sent it to the panelists. Sorry, everyone. So thank you all very much for being a great audience and hanging on in there. I see there's hardly anyone left already, so that's great. And yeah, apologies about my I am in my house and lawnmowers are allowed to go. I live in the terrace. So sorry about that. And yeah, just thanks a lot. Come back to some other seminars. Come and do a course, either a short course or come to a graduate school course, because we love really enthusiastic people. And to get here on a Wednesday night in lockdown is quite a thing, I think. I'm quite impressed. I'm going to do a wave. Oh, bye.
Yeah, so thanks, Louise. And if any of you attendees have anything final you want to put in the chat, then now would be the time to do it. But yeah, we will send you to the feedback form, so do fill that out. Let us know how you found today, and hopefully we'll see you on site at CAT soon, if and when lockdown lifts. But do join some of our other online events in the meantime. Thanks. Bye, everyone.